Section 1. The stream kicks off in the middle of a heated live chat debate regarding a massive breaking political development. A federal grand jury in the Middle District of Alabama has returned a sweeping 11-count indictment against the Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC. The creator addresses the audience's immediate skepticism, firmly rejecting the notion that the organization was merely engaged in standard law enforcement cooperation. Instead, the creator advances the core premise that the SPLC actively crossed the line from monitoring extremist organizations to covertly keeping them operational. By funneling massive amounts of money to these entities anonymously, the organization allegedly ensured that the very threat it claimed to fight would continue to dominate public discourse. As the creator begins playing clips from the official Department of Justice press briefing, the sheer legal weight of the charges becomes clear. The acting federal officials announce a series of severe criminal counts, including 6 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of bank fraud, and a central count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. The creator seizes on these specific financial charges to dismantle the chat's defense that the group was simply paying confidential informants. In the creator's view, legitimate civil rights organizations do not require complex money laundering schemes, shell companies, or deceptive banking practices to issue routine stipends to field sources. The presence of financial fraud charges is framed as definitive proof of a deeply corrupted system. The commentary intensifies as the stream dives deeper into the specific narrative outlined by the prosecution's indictment. According to federal authorities, the SPLC routinely misled its vast donor network by claiming all contributions were dedicated strictly to dismantling white supremacy and hatred. Instead of defunding or disrupting these hate groups, the indictment alleges that the organization systematically manufactured the very extremism it purports to oppose. The creator highlights this systemic manipulation, explaining to the audience that the organization actively subsidized the radicalization process, keeping right-wing groups on life support to guarantee a perpetual state of social friction. The emotional peak of the legal breakdown occurs when the indictment names a highly specific and devastating example of this financial pipeline: the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. The federal prosecution alleges that a prominent member of the leadership group responsible for organizing the notorious protest was an active, paid source for the SPLC, receiving roughly $270,000 over an 8-year period. The creator reacts with shock and validation, pointing out that this funding directly linked the organization to an event that resulted in catastrophic street violence, dozens of injuries, and a tragic death. This revelation is used to argue that the organization was not passively collecting data, but actively financing historical flashpoints. Section 2. Institutional incentives and systematic operations. Moving past the individual actors, the stream broadens its focus to detail the extensive network of extremist groups allegedly touched by this multi-million-dollar pipeline between 2014 and 2023. The creator reads aloud the list of organizations named in the indictment, which spans the Ku Klux Klan, the United Klans of America, the National Socialist Movement, the American Front, and specialized extremist groups like the Aryan Nations-affiliated Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club. The creator uses this expansive list to illustrate a deliberate, structural pattern of funding. By distributing over $3 million across at least 8 different radical entities, the SPLC allegedly built an entire ecosystem of controlled opposition that it could monitor, document, and exploit. The creator outlines the mechanical workflow of what they define as a highly sophisticated, cyclical fundraising hustle. First, the SPLC would allegedly issue secret payments to these radical leaders, who would then use the capital to organize highly visible, provocative public displays. Once those events took place, the SPLC would pivot to generating extensive internal work product, reports, and hate maps, detailing the very activities they had financed. Finally, these terrifying reports would be blasted out to a progressive donor base to trigger massive waves of panic-driven donations. The creator identifies this as a self-sustaining business model where the artificial inflation of a threat directly yields corporate revenue. To explain why such an egregious operation could exist for a decade, the creator pivots to an analytical discussion on institutional incentives. arguing that anti-hate organizations suffer from a fundamental existential dilemma. If racial animosity and right-wing extremism were to genuinely disappear, these massive non-profit apparatuses would instantly lose their societal relevance, political influence, and financial backing. Therefore, the creator posits, human nature dictates that the group must continuously expand the definition of the enemy to survive. This dynamic is compared to an administrative spiral, where an organization, having won its initial cultural battles, must invent increasingly radical frontiers to keep its leadership embedded in positions of power. To ground this abstract theory for the live audience, the creator introduces a series of historical and cultural analogies to illustrate how organizations refuse to dissolve after achieving victory. They cite the Crusades, describing how elite warrior kings and crusaders who commanded massive wealth and legions of men could never willingly return to the obscurity of pushing a plow once a war concluded. A comic book reference is also utilized, noting that the Joker fundamentally necessitates the existence of Batman to define his own identity and purpose. In the same vein, the creator argues that performative activist groups are psychologically incapable of declaring peace because their entire sense of identity, authority, and livelihood is tied directly to an endless state of war. Section 3. Industry Reflections and Streamer Parallelism. In a striking moment of self-reflection, the creator shifts the focus from national politics to the digital entertainment space, drawing a direct parallel to their own career as a content creator. The creator reminds the audience of their long-standing campaign against woke video games, celebrating the fact that independent commentators and traditional gamers have successfully driven multiple highly politicized development studios into financial ruin. However, the creator confesses that achieving total cultural victory carries a bittersweet reality. With the objectionable games effectively hunted into near extinction, the creator wonders aloud what conservative commentators are supposed to do next if they are forced to simply return to playing standard video games. Expanding on this internal dynamic, the creator openly acknowledges the strange symbiotic relationship that exists between opposing political factions in the digital creator economy. They state bluntly that if the cultural left were to completely stop producing content, it would devastatingly impact the viewership and engagement metrics of right-wing channels, and vice versa. Both sides of the culture war rely on the provocative output of the other to fuel their daily commentary, synthesize new arguments, and retain audience attention. The creator emphasizes that this cyclical trap mimics the exact institutional dependencies seen in the SPLC indictment, where a symbiotic ecosystem forms, and opposing forces inadvertently keep each other relevant. The stream's focus shifts back to the live social media timeline, as the creator tracks the expanding corporate fallout of the indictment, focusing heavily on the video game industry. A viral post captures the creator's attention, alleging that major mainstream development studio Bungie had historically directed corporate donations and promotional support toward the SPLC. The creator reacts with immense satisfaction, linking this corporate alliance to the studio's declining software sales, alienated player base, and impending industry layoffs. The creator lambasts the studio for choosing to fund highly divisive political organizations instead of neutral charities, framing their financial trouble as a direct consequence of corporate virtue signaling. Returning to the live feed of the DOJ press conference, the stream highlights a chaotic adversarial confrontation between a mainstream media reporter and the federal officials on stage. The reporter repeatedly attempts to derail the briefing by aggressively questioning the official regarding a leaked internal email, personal lifestyle choices, and a civil lawsuit alleging a computer system login lockout. The creator reacts with open disgust to the journalist's behavior, accusing the reporter of intentionally hogging the limited Q&A clock with petty personal grievances. The creator commends the official for shutting down the line of questioning, framing the media's aggressive interruption as a coordinated effort to obscure the multi-million-dollar fraud case. Section 4. Deep legal questions and speculation. The legal analysis deepens as the creator breaks down a reporter's question regarding the timeline of the alleged conspiracy and potential statute of limitations barriers. The federal official clarifies that the grand jury's findings document an uninterrupted, decade-long operational window that actively extended all the way up to the year 2023. The creator uses this confirmation to counter assertions that the indictment is merely recycling old news from the immediate aftermath of Charlottesville. Because the financial trail demonstrates continuous active funding deep into the 2020s, the creator emphasizes that the criminal exposure is fresh, highly relevant, and capable of dismantling the current leadership structure of the nonprofit. The press briefing also addresses potential deep-seated institutional biases within the Department of Justice itself, specifically regarding the involvement of veteran investigator Joe DiGenova. A reporter questions whether DiGenova's public, pre-existing criticisms of former intelligence officials like John Brennan and James Comey create an unethical conflict of interest or a fatal prosecutorial bias against the targets of the probe. The federal official firmly rejects this premise, stating that strong public commentary does not legally disqualify a prosecutor. The creator strongly agrees with this stance, arguing that federal investigators must be evaluated purely on their fidelity to grand jury evidence and witness testimony, rather than their past political opinions. As the official press briefing concludes, the creator turns back to their timeline to observe the intense speculation surrounding the identities of the 8 unnamed extremist leaders listed in the indictment. The creator notes that a significant portion of the internet has immediately jumped to the conclusion that a highly visible alt-right figure must be the individual who pocketed the $270,000 payout. However, the creator urges caution and analytical thinking, pointing out that people are only defaulting to that name because he remains the most famous survivor of the 2017 rally. The creator argues it is far more likely that the funds went to lesser-known, easily manipulated figures, suggesting names like Richard Spencer as more logical targets for a controlled asset program. Section 5. The Philosophy of Political Conflict. The final segment of the stream transforms into an unvarnished, sweeping critique of the modern conservative establishment's historical failure to handle political warfare. Reviewing old statements from figures like Charlie Kirk, the creator notes that conservative groups have spent over a decade peacefully complaining about being unfairly placed on hate maps next to neo-Nazis. The creator expresses immense frustration with this passive approach, arguing that traditional conservatives are trapped by a desire to remain polite, moral, and principled. The creator bluntly states that this gentle approach has achieved absolutely nothing, declaring that the historical goal of institutional conservatism has merely been to complain, conserve nothing, and remain functionally useless. In a highly provocative rhetorical turn, the creator asserts that defeating a highly weaponized institutional apparatus requires a complete abandonment of polite political norms. They argue that the political right does not currently need nice or gentle leaders. Instead, it requires ruthless individuals who are willing to aggressively enforce the rules and impose severe consequences on their opposition. The creator demands a shift toward public, unyielding legal accountability, stating that true systemic change will only occur when corrupt institutional actors face actual imprisonment rather than endless congressional hearings. This call to action is framed as a necessary evolution for a political movement that has been systematically outmaneuvered. The stream concludes by reviewing archival footage of independent broadcaster Alex Jones from a decade prior, where he laid out an identical theory regarding the events of Charlottesville. In the vintage clip, Jones claimed that the notorious rally was largely an engineered psychological operation, organized by hidden left-wing foundations that hired actors to pose as radicals while forcing local police to stand down. The creator is left in a state of genuine astonishment at the historical trajectory of the story, noting how Jones was universally sued, deplatformed, and mocked for these exact claims. The creator concludes that the newly unsealed 2026 Department of Justice indictment serves as a stunning, historical vindication of a theory that public consensus once dismissed as completely impossible.